Hey, what's up everyone? How's it going? Today I'm going to be making a video about inspiration. And I've been talking about making this video for a little bit, and I'm finally getting to it. Mostly because, I wanted to like gather my thoughts on it and everything because inspiration is like this really kind of broad, nebulous topic, and I think it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Like I don't know. I feel like if you ask, a couple different people, they'd all say that, like, hey, what do you think inspiration is? Maybe they'd all say something a little bit different. I think that when it comes to like art and creative mediums and stuff like that, most people think that inspiration is like what motivates you to draw, and I think maybe that's true to some extent, but not necessarily entirely accurate. I think that inspiration is a little bit more broad than that. I think it goes a little bit deeper than just sitting down and whether or not you feel inspired to draw. I think it goes way deeper than that. And I think that there's a lot of weight placed on like inspiration. Like if you sit down to draw and you're not feeling inspired, then drawing is going to be difficult for you or something like that, or like something's wrong if you don't feel inspired. And I don't think that's true either. So I wanted to talk a little bit about like what I think inspiration is and how I feel about it and stuff. You may feel differently, and that's totally okay. But I figured that if you know how I feel about it, maybe that give you some perspective. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. But it's a good way to learn and kind of think about what it means to you by getting the perspective about what it may mean to someone else. And so I am going to be drawing like a insect terrarium. It was suggested for one of my Patreon supporters for their request, their drawing request, that I draw a bug terrarium, because I made that About Me video where I was talking about how when I was little I would get terrariums and put bugs in them and then draw them. And for me that kind of links together with inspiration. When I was young, I was inspired by nature, and I think that's one of the really important things to think about when you're talking about inspiration, is like what inspires you, because anything inspires you. Like absolutely anything can inspire you. Rather, that was a weird way to say that, but anything can inspire you. A lot of people, myself included, think that inspiration comes from like these usual sources, and a lot of that I think is like movies, music, art, TV shows, animation, books, stuff like that. And that's all like well and good. Like inspiration definitely comes from those mediums and those places, but it's a lot more broad than that too. I mean, like you can certainly be inspired by movies and shows. I mean, many times I've gone out to see a movie and then just been like, oh man, I want to draw that character from that movie, or like that scene was really cool, or like I was inspired by like the special effects or like the technology, and now I want to draw something from that. And that's a really easy way to get inspired. One of the best ways to get inspired and like gain inspiration is to just consume creative media. Look at a bunch of artwork, watch a bunch of movies, listen to a bunch of music. Like that stuff will inspire you artistically, and I think that's a really great way to do it. But I think that inspiration, rather than as a concept of like, oh, now I feel inspired and now I feel like drawing, I think it's you can't quantify it as like just that. I think inspiration is kind of like this buildup of like creative urges within you, like rather than just like the feeling that you get in like one moment of whether or not you want to draw, or whether or not you feel inspired to draw something. It's much more than that. And I keep saying that. I keep saying, oh, it's much more than that. I keep saying, oh, it's much more broad. But I think that's true. I think that while there is that moment of whether when you sit down, like I mentioned, whether or not you feel like drawing, like inspiration is more of like, I think just a general like collection of creative urges. And I said that already. I know I'm kind of going like back and forth here, but I'm drawing bugs, okay? Uh, but Yeah, drawing this praying mantis dude. Because when I was young, I was like out in the garden, out in the yard a lot, looking at plants, looking at bugs and stuff like that. And I played video games and I watched movies and stuff, and I watched Transformers, and then I want to draw all the Transformers, but you know, that's all well and good. Like watching movies and shows and stuff and playing video games when I was little certainly inspired me, but that kind of inspiration didn't really stick with me. I don't know if that makes sense, but like the bugs and like the stuff that I experienced like firsthand, that's the stuff that like really stuck with me. I still draw bugs to this day. I'm still inspired by nature, and those are memories that last a long time. Whereas like watching a movie like that inspired me to draw for an afternoon, but after that it's like, yeah, I drew Transformers a lot when I was a kid, but like I don't, I'm not super inspired to draw Transformers now. um no thanks to Michael Bay, but sorry for the jab at Michael Bay. I couldn't resist it. But anyway, my point is that inspiration comes from more than just creative mediums. It comes from like the entire world around you. I think that if you look at literally anything and it can inspire you, it just has to do with like the way that you think about it. I'm inspired every day just by like everyday objects. Like I spend a lot of time around the house, and sometimes I just look at stuff and kind of like study it, and like think about like, oh well, if I have to draw a toothbrush holder in a comic, I know how to draw a toothbrush holder because I've been staring at my toothbrush holder for for a little while. But I think that a lot of that stuff is just like, if you look at it with a critical eye, you can be inspired by it. Like, you look at pretty much anything in this world, and like you can find beauty in it, even if whether it's insects and nature and animals, or if it's man-made stuff like buildings and cars and vacuum cleaners or toasters. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you can gain inspiration from absolutely anything. I gain a lot of inspiration from just like seeing people out in the world. You get an idea of like how people wear their clothes, how people act, like hairstyles, like all sorts of different things. And you're just looking at the real world to get that kind of inspiration. I know how to draw like sticks and leaves and stuff because I spend a lot of time looking at sticks and leaves. And then when I'm like, oh, I got to draw an insect terrarium, and I'm like, well, I've seen a whole lot of like sticks and leaves and insects and stuff. Like, I know how to draw all that. I can just jump right into it, right? If you see somebody like, when I was living in San Francisco, is a great source of inspiration because I'd ride public transit every day. So I see, a whole bunch of people from different walks of life, just totally different human beings, all pretty much doing the same thing. And that was, no matter like how different people are, like we all share these like common threads. Like we all, take public transit. It doesn't matter like what's going on in your life. Like, humans are all connected, and that was inspired. That was inspiring to me, at that point in my life. And I think that just looking at anything with a critical eye, you can gain inspiration from it. But it's more of just like programming yourself to do that, because like you can look at a vacuum cleaner and be like, oh, that's a vacuum cleaner, and like not have much else to say about it. But if you really think about it, like, okay, well, if I was going to draw a vacuum cleaner, how would I draw it? Would you draw a vacuum cleaner from memory? Would you look up reference? Or how would you do that? I mean, to me, like, I would rather, just spend some time looking at something, get familiar with it, and like, even touch it. And like, that's how I know how to draw a vacuum cleaner. It's like, if there's a vacuum cleaner sitting right next to me, like, sure, I can look at it and just draw it, but I don't know, like if you know what a vacuum cleaner looks like, and it makes it easier to draw. And like, that's a way of gaining inspiration, just by looking at the world around you and thinking about how you would apply it to your art, and like how you would apply that artistically. So, the thing that I learned that I certainly recommend is, a lot of people, you've probably seen like public transit drawings, where artists will take their sketchbook on the bus or on the train or whatever and just like draw people while they're on the train. I think that's a really good exercise. Like, absolutely, drawing people from life, obviously, like that's a great opportunity anytime. And it may make people uncomfortable, but just be sly about it. So I definitely recommend trying that if you've never done it before. But I think that even more powerful than that is, not having your sketchbook on you and looking at something critically and then trying to draw it later, like from memory. I think that's an even more powerful exercise. I mean, like, think about the two different scenarios. Like, first scenario, you're on public transit, you have your sketchbook with you, and you sit there and you draw people in the moment. And like I said, that's an absolutely great exercise. But let's say you don't have your sketchbook on you, and you're like, oh shit, and you saw this like cool person on the bus or whatever, like they're wearing like a cool outfit or something like that. What I would recommend doing in that scenario is kind of just, for lack of a better word, like staring at them. As creepy as that sounds, just kind of like just think about like, oh, if I had to draw this later, like it was a test, like I had to draw this later, and I had to get it as accurate as possible, like how would you look at that person then? If it was like, well, you look at this person, memorize their outfit, and then you have to draw them. That's kind of how I think about it. That sounds maybe that sounds kind of stressful. I don't, I'm not supposed to be like a stressful thing. But like study the person, study the seams on their clothes, like how many buttons their jacket has, that kind of thing. Like just really, really look at it with a critical eye and really break it down. And I think that is probably, the form of inspiration that I think of, when somebody says like, what inspires you? And I'm just like, well, like the world inspires me. Everything inspires me. It's all just about how you look at it. If you're looking at it with that critical eye, absolutely anything can inspire you. You may want to make a suit of armor inspired by somebody's cool jacket that you saw, or something like that. And it's, I think the more you look at the world with that like that artistic eye, that artistic vision, the more everyday things that you wouldn't think would be able to inspire you will inspire you. Even when I'm drawing like, sci-fi stuff, like in my comics and stuff like that, everything is inspired by real world objects, by real world people, events, I don't necessarily say like, if you look at one of my characters, like, oh, that was inspired by this person I saw on the bus. Like that's not always the case, but sometimes it is, a lot of times, like just a piece of clothing, like, I was talking about, like, thinking about people's jackets and stuff. Like, for example, the jacket that Cole wears is inspired by a military. It's an old Army Eisenhower jacket. It's like basically what the Air Force pilots wore before they were actually like called the Air Force. They were still part of the Army, but they had these special jackets, and those are the Eisenhower jackets. And Cole's jacket is inspired by that. So. That's just another example of being inspired by something from the real world, but kind of, understanding what it is, but then making it your own, in a way. And I think that, it's really easy to get hung up on the idea of like, oh, you should be inspired by, other creative stuff. And there's absolutely some merit to that. Like I always recommend to people that, they get like a Tumblr or a social media account just so they can look at other artists and other, creative people, like, even just photographs and stuff like that. If you don't take public transit, or you don't get out of the house and see other people all that often, like you can just go online and, find photographs of people. Like one site or page or whatever that a lot of people probably know about that's like really useful is that like Humans of New York. Like, it's just photographs of like people on the street in like a big city, and like, people wear really interesting outfits, and there's, a big assortment of people from like all walks of life and stuff like that. And that's a great way to get inspired. I would always, when I was in art school in San Francisco, I would always, like I said, like just go out go someplace public and just draw people. And that was really good practice. But like now, I'm not in a big city like that every day. And so I have to think about like, well, I like drawing people. I like to practice drawing, random people in outfits and stuff like that. So like, how can I get that in a setting that, that I don't normally get that like on a day-to-day basis? So, the internet is an amazing, vast resource. You can find anything and everything on the internet. So definitely recommend checking out the internet if you need some need some inspiration. But I urge you not to think about inspiration as this thing that you have or you don't, because in a binary sense like that, it's really limiting, and I think, kind of unhealthy, because a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm not feeling inspired, like I can't draw or something like that, or it's going to be hard to draw, and that's totally not how it works. Like you really, really do not need to be inspired to draw. And if you're not feeling inspired, just pull up some reference from the internet and like just draw some people or draw some buildings and stuff like that. But definitely, I think the most important thing to take away is just to look at your world with a critical eye. I mean, even if you wouldn't consider yourself like an artist or anything like that, I talk about it obviously from the perspective of drawing and stuff like that because I'm an artist. But if you're a musician or a fashion designer, like the same things definitely apply. Like, I see a lot of, I look at a lot of like fashion stuff. Um, uh, even even if I think some of it is like totally weird, like it can all be inspiring in its own interesting, unique way. You really never know like how something is going to like fit together for you in your mind, or like when something is going to come to you. So don't wait for it to come to you. Just just keep your mind open. Let the world kind of just flow through you, and look at all the beautiful details and the beautiful things. Like, coming back to the vacuum cleaners, like you look at a vacuum cleaner, and you think about like somebody designed that vacuum cleaner. Somebody did like concept sketches and 3D models to design that vacuum cleaner, and like some form of passion or love or something went into making that vacuum cleaner. At least, probably, unless the person really hates their job. But even looking at like the contours of a vacuum cleaner and like the stuff like that, like, can inspire you to like draw a cool car, or spaceship, or like a telephone booth or something. Like, who knows? I mean, it's really, I've always had trouble talking about inspiration because it's honestly like just completely infinite. Like the things that can inspire you to make other things, like there's no limit to like the combinations and the things that you can do with your mind, because your mind is like one of the most powerful computers ever. I mean, I know it's not a computer, but for lack of better words, it's like one of the most powerful things on the planet, and like it can really do absolutely anything in terms of creativity. Sometimes you just have to kind of, you know, open yourself up to it and kind of just like let it do its own thing without thinking about it too much. I think that, in general, I'm a very anxious person. I overthink things all the time. Like I overthink things all the time, like on a daily basis. And I think that as much as I struggle with it, and I'm always, trying to work on it and stuff like that, but I think that like overthinking is like the death of creativity. I think it's good to think about stuff and plan stuff, but I also think that if you worry too much about like, oh, am I inspired or am I not, or like, how am I going to gain inspiration, or how am I going to break out of this artist block or whatever? If you think about it too much, you're just going to, like dig a bigger hole. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but like, I think a lot of times it's best to just kind of like go with the flow, Just let the world inspire you, and you could be inspired by songs, you can be inspired by movies, you can be inspired by anime, you can be inspired by cars, and you can be inspired by the person eating a sandwich noisily on the bus. Like, everything is inspiration. That's, look at everything as potentially inspiring to you. And I think the world will not only be a whole lot more beautiful, but I think creativity will come easier. If you just really think about everything in the world as like a potential source of creativity and beauty and all that, because in reality it is. Like, every person is beautiful, every like tree, every plant is beautiful, and everything is different, everything is unique. So don't think that everybody should be following the same rules of inspiration or anything like that. Find what inspires you. Find something that inspires you, rather than thinking, oh, this should inspire me, or, oh, like, I'm not feeling inspired and that's bad. That's not bad. That's fine. You know, it comes and goes. You know, sometimes I sit down at my sketchbook and I'm just like, I don't feel like drawing, and I just get really discouraged and stuff. But then, like, okay, you know, relax, like, it's fine. Like, it's not, you know, stop being so dramatic. And then I'll just like pull up some reference, be like, oh, cool suit of armor. Like, I'll just draw a cool suit of armor, and I won't worry about being inspired. I won't worry about being creative. Like, I'll just draw what I see, and that's totally okay too. So as much as I talk about what inspiration is and what it can mean to you and all that, it's also not necessary. You know, it's totally fine to not be inspired. And I, you know, if you have trouble, like getting inspired, anything like that, I always recommend starting like an idea log. You know, whether that be like in a physical journal. You know, if you have like an idea while you're out and about and you don't have your sketchbook with you, write it down. Or if you know, don't want to carry a paper journal around, do it on your phone, you know, your smartphone, like, you know, take notes or something like that. Or use a voice recorder, you know, whatever works for you, because a lot of times I find like I'll get ideas and then lose ideas. And I'm like, well, that you know, that was a loss, because I was inspired and I was feeling creative and I wanted to make this thing, and then I just forgot it. So, you know, a lot of the ways you can avoid, you know, that uninspired feeling is just by saving ideas for later, you know, not forgetting stuff. It's really useful to write stuff down or record things, to use them for later. I do that all the time with my comics and stuff. Like, sometimes I'll just randomly be out and about, like I'll be at the bank or the post office or something, and like have an idea for a scene in my comic, and I'm like, I don't have my sketchbook, I don't even have a pen. Like, I'll pull my phone out and like hit the voice recording and just like literally record an idea for a comic, like right in front of people, and you know, they think it's super weird and all that stuff, and it doesn't matter because at least I have that idea for later. So yeah, I mean, don't think of inspiration as this like, you know, eureka moment. Think of it as just this kind of running conglomeration of ideas that are kind of swirling around in your head. Don't stress out too much about it. You know, like I always say, art should always be fun. You know, if you're stressing about it, like, you know, take a step back, take a break, and you know, give yourself some time to cool down, and then come back to it with a fresh head. You know, write down your ideas so you don't forget them, and you can use them for later. And you know, just try to look at the world as like this, you know, big, amazing, beautiful place that you can look in any corner of and gain some inspiration if you look at it the right way. So I probably rambled a whole lot in this video. It's gonna be really fun to watch it back, but I hope you enjoyed watching me draw this bug terrarium, at least. When I was a kid, I would keep these terrariums, and I always would get the praying mantis because they're my favorite. You know, keep them in terrarium, keep them fed, a little thing with water in it. So that was really inspiring to me, and as you can see, years later it still is. So, you know, some of that stuff, if you look at it in the right way, it might stick with you for the rest of your life. But yeah, pretty much wrapping up here. I appreciate you watching the video. Thanks a whole bunch. You know, I wouldn't be able to do what I do without you know, coming here and clicking on the video and putting up with me for, you know, 20 minutes or whatever. A little bit longer video today, but I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope it was helpful. You know, maybe made you think, or you know, ask yourself some questions. And if you have any questions for me, you want me to like elaborate on something further, you leave a comment, or you know, send me an email or a direct message on social media or whatever, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Sometimes I'm slow to reply, but I promise I will probably reply eventually. But yeah, anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.